Moderating the discussion, I would like to call upon Mr. Kunal Gulati. Kunal is a second-year student of IIM Udaipur with a professional experience at Nomura Capital. He has a passion for dance and runs his own dance studio in Mumbai. Over to you, Kunal.
Thank you, Shobhika. Organizational structure defines how activities such as task allocation, coordination, and supervision are directed towards the achievement of organizational goals. Traditionally, business owners have arranged people in a triangular hierarchy with owners on the top, managers in the middle, and employees at the bottom. But with constantly changing market trends, coupled with fierce competition, businesses are turning to newer structures that provide them with agility and faster response time. With that, I would like to introduce you all to the third topic for the day, rethinking structures. Pyramid organizational structures to job sharing and part-time flexible roles. I would request the audience to give a warm welcome to our panelists as I invite them on stage. First, I would like to invite Ms. Sangeeta Singh, partner at Sanguine Consultants, to join us on the panel. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Sangeeta Malkhade, Associate Vice President HR at CSS Corp, to join us on the stage. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Vinod Behri, Executive Director HR at Rural Electrification Corporation Limited, to join us on the panel. Lastly, I would like to invite Mr. Debabrata Mahapatra, Head HR, Electronics and Automation Control at L&T, to join us on the panel. As we have proceeded in our previous panels, each panelist would have 5 minutes to share their opening thoughts on the topic, followed by a 45-minute moderated panel discussion, and then I will open the floor for questions from the audience. Now I would request Ms. Sangeeta Singh to come to the podium to share her opening views.
Very good afternoon, Professor Shah, Mr. Nagraj, faculty of IIM Udaipur, students of IIM Udaipur, my fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen, if there are any other ladies and gentlemen. I of course begin by hoping that all those of you in the back who are sitting in the dark are really awake and the coffee has done what it is supposed to do, yeah? So all those who are not awake, please raise your hands. All right, that's good. Great. I think it's really delightful that I make my first visit to IIM Udaipur on such a strategic event. It is a topic which I completely identify with, and I think it is a topic which is totally relevant and most apt for our times today. Rethinking in HR is not just required, it is the critical need of the hour. It's the need of the entire HR landscape today. Because HR as we know it is increasingly becoming jaded, transactional, extremely operational, and therefore, because of the pressure of operational work, getting increasingly undervalued. And any function which starts getting to be undervalued starts becoming uninteresting and keeps all the bright young minds away from it. So there couldn't be a more opportune moment for you all to think of this topic than now, and I think rethinking needs to be done right now. Look at what the HR landscape is today. One software can take away several of our jobs because it will do all of the basic requirements of making offer letters, promotion letters, increment letters, staff data, MIS, all of that can go away. One software will take it away. Another software will take away several more of our jobs and do analysis in terms of rewards, compensation, who gets how much, what is the cost to the company. A number of things are outsourced. Payroll is outsourced. Reference checking is outsourced. Training is getting increasingly outsourced. Performance reviews are getting outsourced. So if everything is getting outsourced, what is it that we as HR professionals are going to be known for? What is it that we are going to be accountable for? What are we going to contribute? Are we going to be pushed into a situation where we are only going to be doing recruitment, fashionably called talent acquisition today? Is that what we want to do? Or is it time that we take a stop, a hard think, and we say the time to reinvent and rethink is now? And I think you guys are doing great pioneering work in starting to do that. So if you look at Wikipedia, and if you just Wikipedia organizational structure, you come to know that it defines how activities such as task allocation, supervision, coordination are directed towards the achievement of organizational aims. The structure allows expressed allocation of responsibilities for different functions and processes to different entities, branch, groups, teams, locations, individuals, etc. Structure itself has evolved over a period of time in organizations. It has evolved from the agrarian structure to the military structure to the feudal structure and finally to the industrial structure. And what we have inherited, we as in, of course, our generation, but also largely your generation, is the industrial structure. And there's a historical context to it, a post-World War II European historical context to it. Largely, that is the structure that we have both inherited, and the structure, the traditional bureaucratic vertical, several layers, one reporting to the other, linear kind of a structure, in which most organizations operate in. Certainly the brick and mortar companies operate in that. Some of them have changed. So there are functional or divisional structures which are flatter than the manufacturing ones. They have horizontal interdependencies, but still tend to be largely vertical. There is a matrix structure, which is more global in its nature and operates really in the area of ensuring that leaders have accountability to multiple leaders, to reporting to multiple leaders, and therefore accountability is shared by a number of people. It has more interdependencies and is largely prevalent in multinational organizations. You have the more circular flat structure, that which a lot of you would not only be familiar with but would aspire to be a part of. Largely seen in university and college spin-off companies, where everybody has a task and a role and is accountable for that task and that role and works with each other, not necessarily in a reporting to, because the overall and the end vision is shared. And of course you have the virtual teams. And for a lot of you, as you will get out of IIM Udaipur and get into your first jobs, it is likely that you will get into a virtual team, because as you heard in the morning through several speakers, rationalization of the workforce is ensuring that you don't have large numbers sitting in any one location. So you will get into your job, into your first job, and start interacting with your colleagues and knowing your colleagues only through email, Skype, conference calls, and never through a healthy gossip session or coffee. Your boss will sit in a remote location because geographical sameness has become irrelevant to the world today, has become irrelevant to an organizational structure today. Which brings to the question, what is the ideal structure for an organization? And which I guess is what we are about to talk about. My answer to that increasingly is that there is no such thing as a permanent ideal structure. Structure needs to be dynamic, it needs to be fluid, it needs to be changing and adapting to the need of the business and to the need of the hour. And it is extremely important that we as future HR professionals, you as future, we as current, understand that structure has to adapt to the need of the business. Business cannot adapt to what the structure is. It has to be the structure which will adapt, and the structure which will change based on what is the market environment, what is the trend, what is the threat perception, what is the kind of talent which is available to run that business or that product or that service. So structure needs to be extremely fluid, extremely dynamic, and it needs to take into account that today Gen Y or even Gen X is not going to be content with a new title every 18 months or 24 months. They want a new role. They want to know what is it that they are going to do differently. They are not even, Gen X or Gen Y is not even content waiting for 5 years before the general manager condescends to say hello to them. That's not acceptable to them. Young people today want to be part of the brainstorming process so that their ideas are heard, so that they have a part to play in what is the end result. They have a part to say in what is going to be the achievement of the goal, whatever is the organizational goal. They like to be involved in defining that goal. They like to be involved in the process of deciding what those goals and targets should be. And most of all, they want their contribution measured. They want it recognized there and then. They're not willing to wait for a number of years to be told that 5 years back you did a great job, because they don't see a 5-year perspective in any single organization. So people today want leadership roles, and organizations today are increasingly talking about creating leaders, and we again heard about it through several people in the morning. So if organizations, people, the economy, the country, all of it needs more leaders, then organization structures need to adapt to be able to throw up and create more and more leaders. So large organizations need to be prepared to break down the organization into smaller work teams, into task teams, so that results can be achieved in a non-pyramidal structure. So every service or every product does not need the same pyramid or the same structure as exists in other parts of the organization. Accountability needs to drive structures, because you see that not all products and all services deliver the same results. So over the years, over the past few decades, we have seen that the same structure does not lead to the same results. So the reverse would be to say that accountability needs to drive structures, diversity needs to drive structures. India is great when it comes, Indian corporations are great when it comes to diversity. We have caste diversity, language diversity. Inevitably there are Gujaratis, Bengalis, Punjabis, etc. in every organization. There are Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Parsis, I mean we have abundance of them. But Indian corporations don't have diversity of gender. Look at the leadership, it's in single digit, women leaders. Women senior managers, less than 20%. India today doesn't have diversity, Indian corporations do not have diversity of differently abled people. So every organization will talk about having wheelchair-enabled offices, and they will have wheelchair-enabled offices. But which organization or which forum is pausing to think and say that the office and the organization is wheelchair enabled? For God's sake, the transportation is not. So how does that person come to the office if he or she does not have a chauffeur-driven car? So isn't all of this part of the structure? Shouldn't structure incorporate diversity of different kinds of talent? And there is enough of research which is available to say that men and women bring different leadership styles to the table. So can structure consciously start incorporating these different leadership styles? Because again, there is enough of research which has proven that all of these differing leadership styles, and look at anything that is there in India, there is Bill, there is Catalyst, Harvard, McKinsey, all of them have research on this. That differing leadership styles which men and women bring are both needed and are both critical to building a successful organization. So structure, when we recommend it, needs to include this, needs to emphasize this and introduce this. And what is this flat structure? New age technology companies have a flat structure, small teams, everybody working together, everybody knows what their role is. But look at the old age law firms. They also have a flat structure. One senior lawyer, and there's no hierarchy in between. There are junior lawyers. So you have an old age service organization and you have a new age service organization having the same structure, but somewhere down the line, we forgot to take these learnings and transport them into other organizations. So as a focused group, corporate India needs to start building teams around highly accessible structures where everyone can access and go up to everybody else. And a structure that focuses on roles, responsibilities, merit, and accountability. And therefore on results and delivery of results. And we need to allow each of the leaders of these teams to see and measure their own contribution. Because if they can see and measure their own contribution, they can plan for their own future. And plan what is the future, what is their contribution going to be for the future. We need to accept that sameness of structure in a single but multi-product or multi-service organization is not necessarily going to deliver the same results. So how is it that in an organization with multiple products or multiple services, we can still create differing structures? We can. You have Mr. Vishal Sikka over the last few days in the newspapers talking about innovation. So if you need innovation, and everyone is talking about innovation. So if you need innovation, you need to create that environment which allows the free flowing of these ideas and allows to pick up talent which is rare or unique and thereby build more and more leaders. Because the only way you can do it is by breaking the linear traditional structure and allowing younger people or allowing different people to test their skills. And I'm not going to talk much about testing skills, one because it has been talked about extensively in the earlier panels, and two because Kunal has been terrorizing me to finish in 5 minutes. So I'm not going to talk about that, but we know that there is an impact. So I'm just going to close by saying we need fluidity so as to empower leaders to build more leaders. That's what a structure needs to do. Because in the final analysis, business is about creating leadership positions, and HR and HR practitioners need to be able to deliver that. I look forward to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Hi everyone, very good evening. Good evening students, I hope you're up and awake. Yeah, we are here for you. Okay, very good evening to you. Thanks for inviting me here to be with you, and glad to be with IMU the second time visiting you. I do have your previous batch with us in CSS Corp and they're doing well, so that's a good news for you. So thanks, and very nice to be here. Thanks Professor Shah for inviting, making me to be part of your delighted evening and the day today. My co-panelists and the professors of IMU, a very good evening to all of you. I'm going to quickly move on to the presentation because Kunal is going to keep the time up out here. While we do that, I'm really happy that this session is the third one in the sequence, because the first two are definitely interconnected with the topic that we are on the table right now discussing. The social media as well as leadership, both are going to be part of this third topic that we are addressing really. So the theme of today, which is rethink and change, I firstly I would like to acknowledge and really commend the students for choosing change as a topic, because change is something that's constant. And we always need to continue to change our goalpost to move it next and next and next. And what's there that the market demands currently. So I think that change being the constant, let's rethink what the structures need to be doing with respect to change. Okay, the elements of an organization, typically an organization is a make of its, I hope it's visible by the way, the presentation is visible till the back.
Ma'am, actually we have two LEDs on the back so they can view there.
Okay, sure, wonderful. So organization is made up of elements such as the main value proposition for which the organization is standing, the main business, the core business for which it stands. A very core element of an organization is also its structure. What is it that for doing that particular business that the structure needs to be? The culture, the people, you can see Infosys where you really have Narayan Murthy as a leader, as people of Infosys which made the organization. So it's not only what you stand for on the business, but the people also of an organization form really the value proposition, and hence any organization is made up of these elements which are very critical to make a strong organization. Having said that, what does a structure require? If the organization elements are critical to be structured, what forms an organization structure? So organization structure is again created with its organization philosophy that they want to stand for. Yeah, the size of an organization is very, very critical component when we are talking about organization structure, because if it's a large organization, it needs to have a structure that's tall properly in hierarchy. When it comes to a product organization, which could be a small element, then your structures need to be flat in the way they are operating. The teamwork needs to be there. So structures depend a lot on the size of the organization. The organization culture that you would like to build, you would like to have an open door policy, you will have a different structure. You would like to have decisions that are only being made by the leaders, you will have a different structure. So structure is a very key component when it comes to the organization structures to be formulated as component of roles, responsibilities. Do you want to stand for a niche business? Do you want to stand for technology? Do you want to stand for delivery? So your delivery, technology, all of them form, become components of your structure. So leadership style, do you want leaders who give empowerment, or do you want leaders who are going to be controlling and commanding? So organization structures have a huge impact when it comes to which kind of structures do we have. Moving on to see what really are the typical structures that we saw in the past, and they do continue to have. So as I said, large organizations typically have this kind of a tall structure, which is a pyramid structure, a very well-known structure there for ages, and we need to look at whether is this the structure that will really do well for the business that we stand for. So that is something that the organization needs to question. If my philosophy is to be open door, is my philosophy to be open to the market, to the customer, then will I choose this structure? Will I choose a different structure? So tall structures, typically the pyramid structures, have some very key positives to take away. A person who is with career actually knows how am I going to grow. He knows the goalpost. He will continue to see a very vertical growth path for himself. He will not see so much of a horizontal, but he will see a vertical growth path. He will also have very clear communication channel which is coming through the top-down leadership. It will not be so much a bottom-up, but it will be a top-down communication channel that will be there. There will be teams which are operating at large scale when there is a structure of a pyramid kind, and you will also have specializations taking place in the organization. But there are more negatives of a tall structure than positives, but it depends on the business as you are driving, and Sangeeta also rightly said, what is it that the business is doing and what is it that they want to have a structure is what will define. the organization adopting the right structure. It has to be fluid to the business's requirement. So the negatives of a tall structure typically are it has multiple layers. It does restrict your communication because you're only talking about your immediate manager giving you a communication and not really coming across from everywhere, anywhere. You also have underutilized people because you are looking at a very broad number of people doing very small niche work and then continuing to just grow in the hierarchy. So with that I will, it also leads to competition, a lot of competition among people. We moved on and we also saw in the industry flat structures coming, okay? And more organizations, as you see in IT services, also I'm sure in manufacturing now have flat structures. And what did flat structures really do to the industry? They basically brought in a lot of independent thinking, a lot of innovation, empowerment, people having a lot of, managers are being heard. There are lots of leaders coming out of the young age. So flat structures basically gave people a lot of more avenues of rapid growth, rapid communication, as well as empowerment levels definitely went up. Quick decisions take place when there is a flat structure because you are not going through the hierarchy of asking too many people. Decisions are faster, autonomy is there in the system. What happens with negative structure or rather flat structures though? It can lead to large teams are not there, and there are or rather because of the flat structure there are very large teams, and the teaming issues could be there. There is not enough collaboration because I do not know what the other fifth person is doing in my team. If there was a smaller team, I would have probably be better bonded. So large teams can also lead to some amount of teaming issues. It can also impact the quality of performance because someone is more capable and someone is not. But having known the pros and cons of both flat and tall structures, let's move on and look at what looks like is the way forward, which is our today's topic. What is the change? What is the change that we're looking at the structures? I would like to invite some views also from all of you, but probably we will take them up more at the Q&A time. But the time to think here is it the pyramid that's going to be there? Is it a flat pyramid? Is it a tall pyramid? Is it a job sharing? Is it flexi working? What is going to be the future of work as we move forward in the industry? What isn't working today? Is everything hunky-dory and working well in all the organizations, or what are some of the structures causing really disruptions on some of the organizations? So these are some of the thoughts for us to really take them up, and we'll take them up as we move forward. I have a take on where the industry is probably going, and hence would like to talk about why is the change required really right now. And the change is required because we are going to be dealing more and more with Gen Y and Gen Z. So Gen Y is already sitting here in front of us, and all of you plus those who are already in our industry, in IT, especially where I'm coming from, is a lot more enthusiastic, lot more expecting, and you're expecting the tech savvy nature of the industry where it is going right now is definitely not going to allow so much. The other two structures that I talked about earlier they are going to be heading us somewhere else. And where are they heading us really? So we are talking about Gen Y and Z, which demands in terms of a work-life balance. There is more and more that everyone wants to do in short time on hand. One wants to be playing golf, one wants to be being in gym, one wants to be actually working in an organization. Also there is a lot of sensitivity and awareness in India now about CSR, and most of you also want to associate yourself with the society at large. And I think those are good reasons to definitely take on flexi work. So work-life balance is something that's coming as the key at workplace for all of us as HR and as management to really deal with. More creativity comes in. So you definitely want creative jobs. You want to continue to do something of your passion to, continue to, like Kunal wants to dance and who wants to continue to run his dancing probably profession that he likes his company to be run. I'm sure there has to be a balance of that kind, the dance and the organization that he will work for. He may choose to work half a day in an organization and half a day do something that he likes to do. So their industry has to be inviting to this, and that's why the structures are definitely going to need to be addressed in the way people are looking at it at Gen Y and Gen Z. What does it mean for an organization? Yes, organization will definitely gain and benefit a lot with this kind of a structure. Because it is going to be having a vast level of talent pool. One person comes, does a technical bit, and the second person takes on from there, and that's going to be really the work of tomorrow. It is not just going to be, I do my part and then, part-time I do not work. So it's not only half a day of work for one and then doing socializing outside, but I finish my work, same desk gets occupied by the next agent who comes in, and he does a handshake and he moves on to give the solution to the customer. And that customer benefits at large, because we are talking about 24/7 support globally, and organizations are definitely going to benefit through this kind of a large talent pool, which is really the crunch of tomorrow. So definitely the organization is going to benefit a lot through this change of flexibility. Also attracting and retention of talent is going to be high, because you are giving a work-life balance to an employee. Optimum use of facility, where people are going to be using the same desk, maybe 2 people, maybe 3 people, you never know. So there's no limit to that. Also mixed skill sets are going to be the pattern of tomorrow, where one will need to be learning different things. At the same time, you're going to have continuity and learning and job sharing, which will allow people to do that. So what's happening really in the industry today is the tech savvy generation of Y and Z is going to be really breathing technology day in and day out. I mean, I have a son who is at 11 years old, and he is, the first thing in the morning he wants his iPad in his hand. So that's where tomorrow is really. So it's really going to be something that the organizations need to think about and do, and I think organizations are already doing about it. So I'm going to talk about that now. So what's the future of work really? I think the future of work is going to be more and more this, which is flat organizations, job sharing, and flexi working, all of this, all 3 of these. So some of the leaders who have already done it, we have Google, which has huge facility, and they are also coming up with a big setup in London, which is on a large space. They are going to have a huge swimming pool, cycles, gymnasium. You have clock rooms for people to come and park their cycles, come and take shower in the office, continue to work. So whether it is office or it is an extension of actually doing your own stuff, it is all of that, and nobody will question you as to what you're doing. They're coming up with desks and workspace, which is going to be more collaborative, where people can stand. There is another organization similar to this, which is ThoughtWorks, which again has a very collaborative model of working, where teams work in a circle. I mean, our team sits only in a a conference table model, and that's how they work, from the leader to the team member. So there are many organizations. You look at Apple. Apple is again leading. Their benefit hugely by doing flexi working. They've been able to provide people benefits. While I was reading up, and I would thank you for giving this topic to me. While I was reading up the research for the first time, I got to know that flexi working came up as early as in year 1967, and it originated in Germany and some of the regions in UK, and it was more to do with the traffic on the road. Not surprised like India, right? And Bangalore has a bottleneck of traffic on the road. You go to Mumbai, Mumbai has that, and every metro in India is, I think, challenged by the same. But where it really began, a lot more actually contributing longer hours, as well as when they came into work for the shorter hours, there was a lot more commitment, engagement, and improved motivation levels. So Red Hat, Nestle, and there are plenty more examples out here. So what do I mean? I'm just quickly on the last two slides, Kunal. I do not know how many minutes I've taken, but how many minutes have I taken?
50. 50.
15. Okay, 3 minutes more. Okay. So in terms of change, what is the change, and the organization and the management and HR will need to look at is to how to combat this change which is happening with respect to flexi working and job sharing, which is not very new and which is not very large scale, but in small pockets. It's happening in a big way also in IBM, Accenture, and many other Indian organizations have also taken up that. The change needs to be combated with fostering the trust. There has to be a huge amount of trust. Is the employee remotely, virtually working, not working? It has to be completely productivity driven. The goals have to be monitored in that fashion. You need to have open leadership where the leader doesn't question, doesn't really look at it. He needs to be looking at it more objectively than subjectively. Is the person spending time? Is this happening, not happening, all of that. So there have to be timelines, deadlines, more objective goal setting, and outcome based really needs to be looked at. A lot of communicate, because without communication the person will not be able to collaborate, will not be part of the larger organization, will not be able to contribute to what the organization's outcomes and vision is. So he needs to be a very proactive communicator, and really the person who knows the self and is the person who knows the culture of the organization. So there has to be a person who is getting to do the flexi work, is typically a trait of a person who is self-motivator, self-engaged, believes in the working remotely also for the organization, and really linked and hooked with the organization values and vision and that kind of a personality. So that needs to be the really a DNA of a person who gets on to working there. So let's celebrate the differences that exist with respect to different organization structures. There has to be a huge amount of trust moving forward in the industry while we move on to the different structures of work, because this is going to be the future of work. So work cultures will define from this. Yeah, so death of an office is the future.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would request Mr. Vinod Behari to come to the podium to share his thoughts on the topic.
Good evening, everybody. Professor Janat Sir, Director, Mr. Nagaraj, faculty members and students of IIM Udaipur, my co-panelists, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege for me to be here this evening in the midst of you in response to your invitation to be here and to be sharing some of my thoughts on this important aspect of change management in the context of human resource management. Fully conscious of the fact that we are at the fag end of the day, you all must be running out of your stamina and patience, as also of the fact that two of my previous speakers have covered considerable ground as far as organization, design, structure, etc. are concerned. I will be essentially brief, very brief and to the point. And I assure you that I'll take not more than 5 to 6 minutes. Change, as they say, is the only constant factor in life. And we human beings, are constantly evolving, changing, growing, developing. So a human resource management function that we all are engaged into has to primarily address the concern, the issue of change, which keeps sweeping the organization day in and day out. However, I would like to add a caveat here that when it comes to organization and people management, there are certain aspects which are constant, which do not change. Maybe our values, our ideals, etc., our commitments. At the same time, there are systems, processes, which keep changing and evolving, and they must change and evolve in the interest of improving our work systems, improving our efficiency, etc., etc. Since the details about organizational design, structure, etc., have already been covered very substantially by previous co-panelists, I'll come straight to the pyramid organization structure, the sub-theme of for this panel, pyramid organizational structure, job sharing, flexi manning, etc., its implication and consequences. Pyramid kind of organization which used to be there and which continue even now in some way have in general given way to a flatter organization in the interest of speedier decision-making process, in the interest of delivering business results faster. Relating myself to a public sector organization, our hierarchy is indeed tall. When we refer to managerial hierarchy, it's indeed quite tall. We have about 10 to 11 levels of manager within the organization. However, as I said, in order to speed up the process of decision making and deliver results, we have done very considerable amount of what is known as delayering. And therefore, we have divided or subdivided the entire 11 or 12 hierarchies into junior management cadre, middle management cadre, and senior management cadre, so that a decision-making process that emanates at junior management process will not go beyond 3 or 4 levels. That's the kind of delayering that we have practiced and we continue to practice, and it has been giving us very good results. Managerial hierarchy still continues to be tall, as high as 11 to 12, but that's for a different reason, because we need to provide career growth opportunity to managers who join us. They must have a sense of satisfaction and success on being elevated to a higher level. And we also try our best to ensure that job content brings about certain amount of change, if not substantial change, at every elevation, besides financial gains and enhanced work visits, etc. So that's the way we look at it, and that's the way we practice it. Now coming to flexi manning, outsourcing, and those kind of work practices and their implications. All of us have been taking recourse to these things as they offer very obvious advantages in terms of economy and speed. Perhaps our recruitment cycle, particularly in public sector, being a little longer and time-taking on account of huge amount of procedural detailing that is required. Flexi manning or outsourcing is considered a short-term solution. But in the process, what worries me is that we compromise on certain other issues and run into conflicts. We create disharmony within the organization. We also run into legal and ethical issues, particularly when we attempt at enforcing 2 sets of service condition, one applicable to a permanent workforce and other to one hired under flexi manning or outsourced arrangement. We usually have temptation to do so, and consequently we run into serious problems later on. There is ethical concerns, legal concerns. Quite often I have seen matters landing up in courts of law and judicial pronouncement, questioning management's intention in doing so, and at times ordering that people who have been hired under flexi manning systems or through an outsourcing arrangement should be taken on the permanent roles of the organization. So all that I am trying to say, that while it is good, but we must also do it very carefully and ensure that in our over-anxiety to embrace change, we should not run into these problems which create problems for the organization, or where we ourselves as manager feel ethical or legal problems arising and consequently facing adverse situation. So therefore, my suggestion will be that before we, start these activities, we must do our homework very carefully. We must ensure that flexi manning or outsourcing or these modern practices are adopted with sufficient degree of care, and that at least we ensure that the kind of job we entrust them are not same or similar to the ones being performed by our regular employees, and thereby introduce, consciously or unconsciously, any amount of discriminatory HR practice which would subsequently be questioned either by ourselves within the organizations or outside, worse still, being questioned by courts of law. So we must be amenable to change, we must embrace the change, but we must do so with sufficient amount of care and caution. Thank you.
Please make his opening statement.
Well, good afternoon, or shall I say good evening? In power sector, we normally work in shifts, and we work in shifts because, and particularly the night shift, and we work in night shifts because all of you, when you sleep, you have power at your homes, and the night shift is normally known as the graveyard shift. Yeah. So probably I am standing here at the end of the graveyard shift, but I hope all of you are awake and will be with me for the next 5 minutes. And of course, after that, all of you will be really awake because you will have questions and we'll have to be awake. So, fine. What I'll do, first of all, let me thank the entire team Udaipur for inviting me here. And I'm really delighted to be here. And the way you have organized this, hats off to you. And hats off to the entire batch. What I'll do here, you had a lot of the fundamentals, yeah, what it is, how organization structure should be there or not, what are the plus points, the minus points, What I'll do, I will not be talking about all that. I will go by the way your, normally the classes happen these days. I will tell you a story, but probably a real story, right? And then we'll make sense out of it, that how, the concepts of organization structure has played out in that. I won't take you through everything of that because I have only limited time, as Kunal says, so I'll be brief, but some of it, if you feel like, we can take up whenever we have a discussion here, right? I was working in this company which own what is normally known as a bid project in the power sector. Now, typically, those of you who are familiar with the power sector scenario, you know that most of the power companies, they work on what is called a cost-plus model. Now, what happens is, all that operating cost and the capital cost and certain rate of returns together determine what will be the final tariff. That means the final, the per unit rate that people like you and me will pay. There is a lovely business to be in and good, decent profit you make. Government changed the dynamics a little, somewhere in 2006 when they said, no, we'll go for a bid tariff model. Now, what happens in a bid tariff model? You bid for the end tariff. That you say, I will provide you electricity at this rate, right? And the lowest bidder gets the chance to develop the project. So, what it meant a significant shift from a cost-plus model to a highly cost-competitive model. Because if you wanted to make profit in a bid power plant, then you have to be very, very careful about all your costs, right from the designing of the plant to executing the plant to ensuring that continuous operations also happen. So you'll have to look at manpower, you'll have to look at structure, you'll have to look at so many things. Otherwise you don't make any profit. Now this company of ours got this. Now in some rainy evening like this, on a Saturday, our MD called us sometime in 2007, February or March. And he said, and the HR people were there, and he said, look, this is what has happened to this organization. Now we have got a bid project. And for the first time in this country, we have to build a 800 megawatt plant. Now no one has built a 800 megawatt plant in India before. I mean, even after also. Till now that stands out as the only plant which has got a 800 megawatt in it. So we don't have any benchmarks. Now who are our benchmarks then? We don't have national benchmarks. So we'll have to look at international benchmarks, right? And Tatas being Tatas, the benchmarks, as he said, will not be only in project construction. The benchmarks also has to be in quality, in reliability, in safety, and all that. And then, again, ending his 10-15 minutes of talk to us, he said, look, at the end of the day, we also have to be cost competitive. So he said, go ahead, do whatever you want, but I want an organization which will deliver this. And because it's happened to be the showcase project for the organization. So we worked on it. A lot of time was spent, a lot of debate, discussion, all that happened. For 2 months, we were really struggling around this. And then finally, we thought that we'll build a different organization. Even within the ambit of the existing 100-year-old successful company, we'll build a new organization. We said it would not work if we do it within the same organization. So what we did, we created a completely new organization. And what kind of an organization it was? It was flat. The earlier part of the organization had some 7-8 layers. This had only 3. It is a very highly decentralized structure, so non-hierarchical, flat, and absolutely collaborative, team-based kind of structure. So most of the decisions, there are a lot of devolving of authority to the people to take decisions, a lot of autonomy to people. And this company worked brilliantly with this change and having a structure which was very different from the original one, with a lot of autonomy to people, with a team-based working, with a collaborative style of functioning, and with a fast decision making. This company worked almost miraculously. Did it succeed? It succeeded brilliantly, that's what I'm saying. The plants were commissioned 6 months ahead of schedule. It set all the benchmarks it set out to do, right? So what are my lessons from this? Lesson number 1. If you want to create, if you are thinking of a paradigm shift, if you are not thinking of a moderate shift, if you are talking about a paradigm shift, then probably in the existing companies, you will find it extremely difficult to do. So create a new organization. That's 1. 2, it succeeded because the structure was absolutely fit for the kind of vision or for the kind of work it was, or the value it was supposed to deliver. Sangeeta spoke about that. Different structures would meet different needs. So this structure met that need brilliantly. We had all kinds of people in this organization. Even the CEO was on contract. Unbelievable in that 100-year-old part of the organization. CEO was on contract, long-term contract. We had people on long-term contract, we had people on short-term contract, we had people working part-time, we had people who were working as consultants, we have people who were working at all different locations. Our design team was in Bangalore, the engineering team was working from Mumbai, and the execution team was at Mundra. So all these could coordinate. So a lot of technology, the latest in technology was used, things happened, we'll discuss more about that. But fundamentally, what I believe, that if you want to change, then probably in a core sector like us, you may probably need a very different new organization to build. The second point, we said that this organization fitted what it needed. The third important thing is, what is HR's role? Is it enough to just create an organization or look as a structure and start working, populate with some people and then do it? Probably no. You'll have to look at a whole lot of other things. I'll give you only one example. Now imagine you move from a hierarchical organization to a team-based organization. Now fundamentally ask yourself, what kind of people you need to succeed in a team-based organization? Now the guys who work in a team-based organization has to have, all these guys have to have tremendous amount of social skills. You must learn how to work with each other. You must learn how to appreciate somebody else's point of view. These are competencies which are very different from working in a very hierarchical organization. You also need to, if you are working in a team-based or cross-functional team-based organization, you also need to go beyond your normal functional knowledge. Because there is a finance guy or there is a logistics guy, he is raising a point. Now, unless and until you really appreciate and understand what he is trying to say, I don't think you will be found valuable in that. And the organization that we created, there, people were never valued for what position or designation they hold. They were valued for what they bring to the table. So therefore, HR has a lot of role in building up the right competencies that people need to succeed in a different kind of organization structure. I will rest my case with that. We'll have more discussion around it when we sit down there. Thank you for listening.
We'll overshoot a little. Okay, we'll take half an hour till we'll wind up by 5:30. I'll ask one question. Till the time, I want the audience to be prepared with a question, and we'll go like that, one-on-one. All right?
The organizational structure leads to the company. Professor Sunil Maheshwari had touched upon this in his keynote speech. I would like to bring that again. Should structures be corporate driven or competition driven?
I think structures need to be driven by what is the need of the business. If like we just heard, the business, and that was a wonderful case study, the business need drove what the structure was. There was a business need, there was a vision, and there was a set of parameters laid out into which the structure fitted. So whatever is the need of the business and whatever is the need of the vision envisaged in the beginning is what the structure should play around. It cannot be prefixed before you're clear about what is the goal and what is the vision of or what is the task at hand.
I agree and I compliment with what Sangeeta is saying. Structures completely need to go with what the business that the organization stands for. Okay, it really cannot have a structure that the competition is doing. What the organizations do need to be aware of is that am I becoming obsolete with my structure? So there has to be a checkpoint by the organization that needs to be done every 2 to 3 years to understand how valid am I for the today's need of my business. So the structures need to be definitely looked at by the existing organization for the business that it stands, because change is again happening all around you. So you need to be cognizant of the fact what the competition is doing and where the competition is going, but you need to be very much aware, and your structures need to be for the business that you are in so that you get the optimum out of that.
Absolutely agree. See, when you are faced with business realities, your situation does not necessarily lend itself to textbook solutions. So you have to innovate. You have to look at what are the challenges in front of you, what the need of the hour is, and then accordingly innovate upon what is there in the textbook and develop a structure of your own which best answers your situation, which is what we have done and which is what I spoke about.
Yeah, I'll add only one little dimension to it. Obviously, the structure would follow the strategy of the organization, but also you need to look at what's the kind of culture prevailing in the organization. Now, that culture will determine what shape this finally takes. Whether it works within the organization, you create a new organization, because if you create a new organization, you are taking a very conscious bet because it had a, it has the potential to create a tremendous amount of rift between the existing part of the organization and the new part of the organization. So you'll have to be very careful about who's the culture also. So one is strategy, obviously, culture, your ability to take risks. I think those three should determine what kind of structure you would like to build.
My next question would be, any change in the organizational structure has significant impact on its functioning. So employees get comfortable with a particular working style, and reporting structure. Mr. Berry, with your experience in working in public sector undertakings, what are the major challenges faced to bring about a change because of the rigidness of the company?
See, organizational structure and organizational change, two things you have referred to. As far as organizational structure is concerned, I've already explained my case that we have a tall managerial hierarchy still prevails, no doubt. That exists there for a very different reason. But as far as organizational hierarchy is concerned, a hierarchy which is responsible for delivering business results, we have innovated on it. We have done considerable amount of delayering, as I said, dividing them into three structures: junior management, top management, middle management, and top management, so that the decision-making process does not at any point of time involve more than 3 or 4 levels of managers, which is how we have cut down on the response time, and which is how we have been able to achieve our business results much faster. But for the reason that we had to do as a business requirement, we didn't face much of resistance within the organization. We could explain our case well, and it was not something which was going to hurt the employees in any way. But we retained the hierarchy of managers, which was meant to take care of their interest in the matter of career progression, etc. Having taken care of that, the change that we introduced to speed up the decision process was very much accepted within the organization, and it helped us a lot.
Let me take you back to the same example which I quoted. Now we had one part of the organization which has been there operating in a different kind of system, and let's remember it has been a very successful organization. It has been a bellwether of the Tata Group till probably TCS came along. So when we created this new one, a lot of people from the existing part of the organization, we initially moved to the new organization. But what we found, not many of them could find the new setup, the new way of working, or the new structure very comfortable. Because it was very different from what they have been doing for ages. So what we did, that organization was populated mostly with people whom we had and who fit into that kind of a culture. So even the rules, policies, the practices that we built, the compensation practices, the personnel policies, everything was different because that was fitting into that kind of a flat, non-hierarchical, fast-paced, project kind, team-based organization, right? So my point is, if you are trying to make a change, we have to always remember that the organizations have what is normally, you talk about in textbooks called organizational memory. And this organizational memory is very strong. And this is very difficult to change. So maybe we'll have to look at whether you spend all your energy in changing that organizational memory or you do it new. That would be my answer to it.
I think we often forget is that all organizations are peopled with people who have more than average intelligence, and systems or processes fail because we do not explain and we do not communicate. I know there was one slide that said communicate, communicate, communicate. I think that was yours. That we do not explain why we are doing what we are doing. If we do that, most people are extremely open and extremely adaptive enough. Human beings are adaptive by very nature. If we explain and we tell them what is being done, most people accept change far more readily than you think they will accept. And it's important to remember that, that's the important lesson in the whole change process.
Yeah, just want to add on to that, Kunal, a bit, complementing the fact of what Sangeeta said. Very much it depends on how ready is the organization for the change. And if you, from the time of hiring, you go ahead and hire the right people, which are, those who are open to the mindset of change, and you as an organization create your own culture itself of change driven, then even an organization structure change will not come as a shock for anybody. And that will be the larger piece to be addressed as to what is it that you build as a culture in the organization and which type of people do you hire. So it begins from the hiring stage. Do you take people who are open to adaptability, aligning, and then they take on the change very quickly. The second part to it is also in terms of the structures are required to be changing every now and then. So taking communication as the key, the very purpose, if it is communicated top down with multiple channels, making everyone as a part of the process that this change is likely to come, and you do it well prepared in a very methodical way, I think people will just appreciate the change instead of refusing the change.
Do we have a question from the audience? Is it Tom? Yeah. Can you pass the mic to the audience?
About the change process, what is an optimum way of scrutinizing the actual change in the organization? We're talking about the change process, the organizational restructuring and everything. So, what is an optimum way of scrutinizing the actual change which has been implemented in the organization?
I would say if you think there is not enough noise in the system, so one is if the change has been successful, the change will be smooth where you will be able to see in the engagement levels in the organization. So we talked about a lot about how the employee engagement levels are in the organization in the morning sessions. And we as HR continue to study how the engagement levels on the floor are within each of our businesses across all the different industries. So change will be looked at and seen in multiple ways. One will be how is your leadership responding to the change. Okay, so the very first success of a change would be your leadership teams accepting it. Your attrition levels are not going up. Okay, I mean if they are stable, if they are rather lower than what they were in the past, then that's a trend to be looked at, and that means the change has been accepted well. And in multiple different ways in the engagement survey that you would get to know that employees are a lot more motivated with the change than really being against the change.
Change has a purpose always in organizations. It is never because it's never done because okay, we have nothing else to do, so let's change something. There is always a fundamental business reason why change is being brought in or why change is being sought. So the biggest measure is the result of the business. If that is being achieved, then you know that you are on the right track. And then you have various other supplementary measures like attrition, like what is your status when you come to IIM Udaipur, are you day 1, day 2, day 3? So you have various other supplementary measures also. But you can never take the focus away from the fact that the business measure is the primary measure for any change.
Yeah, I think both the Sangeetas have answered you what you wanted to know. Probably if I have to put it in 2 words, I would say sustainable change. Is the change sustainable? Has it sustained over a certain measurable period of time? I think that's a significant thing in terms of understanding whether this change brought in good results. And typically in businesses, what would happen? That change will sustain, which is actually aiding and improving the business. So, that's what they have been trying to say. So I think that answers your question, I believe. Yeah, thanks.
One indication of acceptance of change by the employees that you've been able to deliver on the results, and there is no issues raised about it by the employees, particularly in the context of public sector companies where there's a fair amount of democracy and every employee can raise any issue about anything, whether it impacts him or it impacts the organization. If there you are able to sail through your change process, implement it, and get business results, then that's the sure shot indicator that it has been successful and will carry on.
My next question would be, with the introduction of product team organizational structure, which gives a lot of flexibility, decisions are quick and employees are rapidly deployed. What opportunities does this structure provide to employees and how does it benefit them? What opportunities does this flexible organizational structures provide to the employees and how does it benefit them?
Yeah. I think plenty of opportunities, and I think easily that's what is being demanded by all the KPO technology companies today. It creates a lot of leaders because you break teams into smaller teams, and each team either has a defined leader or a leader emerges in that team and becomes visible on his or her own merit. And in terms of opportunities, I think it gives employees, youngsters, leaders an opportunity to work in several different roles at a certain level and demonstrate their own skills. It allows them to measure their own contribution because they know what is the end goal and they know that they have to achieve it in a certain time or in a certain manner, and they measure it in their own way. So I think flexibility brings, the first thing that it does is flexibility brings out, it helps emerge far more leaders than old world structures do.
To add on to that, flexibility also allows you really as an organization to explore a lot more opportunities. So it gives you opportunity to get diverse workforce. Like many organizations today, and we keep hearing them, I'm sure I'm not talking something that's not known to everyone here. A lot more women employees are joining the workforce, and Axis Bank, you take it, or Google, IBM, all of them are reaching out to women who would have taken probably a break in their careers because of child rearing or all of that. Could be in-laws who are old at home, or parents who need to be taken care of. And these women really take a break of those 1 or 2 years where they need to attend to the needs, and they are brought back. Sorry, am I creating noise? Okay, so we can optimize a lot of workforce which is otherwise not available. So flexi working is definitely going to be there to optimize on women, on diverse, on we could also have the retirement age actually go up, because we are talking about flexi working, and someone who is actually out at the age of 60 not necessarily should be out at 60 but can also work till 70 because you're giving him the flexibility. And there are many people from army and those backgrounds, so typically join the industries, do come back as consultants and continue to work for a very good cause, and are extremely productive and value add to all the organizations by being there for the flexi work.
Yeah, it provides them with excellent opportunity and exposure to get exposure to a function and deal with an issue which they wouldn't have been able to do in a normal work situation. Like in our case, we have a regular practice of forming cross-functional team to deal with specific issues. Now those cross-functional team consist of people drawn from diverse background, functional background. So it's this opportunity that affords them a chance to look at other problems and thereby gain exposure and maturity in dealing with that problem. And it gives them an excellent amount of job satisfaction. If we follow a very stereotyped kind of an organizational structure and allowing employees to deal with their work in that way, perhaps they won't get that kind of exposure.
Yeah, I would say, probably that word relative will be important. It's not that you don't learn in one or the other. Probably you will learn relatively much more in a different structure than from the other one. Someone said that in a flat non-hierarchical kind of structure, your self-actualization needs are met much more, and probably your safety needs needs are met much more in a safety security kind of needs are met much more in a hierarchical structure. But I would only say add the word relative before all this. So it's relatively more here, you get more opportunities to self-actualize.
Panel members and the members of the chair. It would be great if you can, if each of the panelist members can throw some light on forecasting the upcoming organizational structures in their own industries, since you all come from a different industry.
So if I had to
I
really...
think his question is the way forward in your industry. So,
I think I'm in my presentation, but I think all forms of structures are here to remain. Okay, really to answer that question, because it depends a lot on what the organization wants to do the business of its kind. So it is business driven very clearly. It also depends on the size of the organization. And then within that size, if the organization intends to take different ways, then it can be flat as well. So it is not necessary that a large organization will only have a pyramid structure, but it can go ahead and intend to address it very differently. But I think a large way the future looks like will move to the flexi working, job sharing, and it is going to be work from home. So working from anywhere is going to be the future, not only in India, but I think it is quite a large already in number of percentage in US and rest of the world as against India. But the percentage in India will increase towards flexi work in the coming years because of Gen Y, Gen Z, the tech savviness and the availability of data and connectivities across the globe. So more and more it will head towards flexi work.
I think it will be dangerous to generalize that a particular kind of organizational structure will hold good for a particular kind of industrial area. In my opinion, this is essentially an organization specific issue. Each organization has to look at the issue, demands a taller hierarchy. That will be there in those kind of organizations.
Yeah, I agree with him. The only generalization if I can make, I would only say that organizations are going to be far more complex. So you're not going to see organizations which are only flat or only hierarchical, or it is going to be a complex, because organizations will do so many different things. Some organizations would continue to, like many of our organizations, there's a lot of merit in having a tall hierarchical structure, because if you're operating in a very steady state kind of environment and you are, the production kind of thing that we do, so probably we don't need far too many innovations in those kind of things. We need efficiency, which a bureaucratic organization provides. We need, timely deliveries and certain things. So particularly following certain orders principles probably is very good. But there are many other things where you probably need a different kind of structure. That is one. The second point is most of us are today are globalizing. So for instance, the present company where I work, we have a manufacturing facility in UK. We have a manufacturing facility in Middle East. There are 2, 3. Then we have a manufacturing facility in Kuala Lumpur. Now, and then one in Australia. Now tell me, we can't afford to have the same kind of structure at all the 4 places. Now if you are going to US and you are saying that I am going to build an organization there, then probably you will fall into what really would work there. Probably plenty of people would want to work, see job sharing, and so many other models, which may not be the in thing in my organization here in India. So the only word I have is organizations are going to be complex. So get ready for it.
Finished our program in jobs. Most of us will be joining organizations which already have a very different structure. They are evolved to a certain extent. But some of us would be joining startups or would be thinking of starting our own companies. So how relevant is organization structure for us at that point of time, and what should the vision of such organizations be, especially in this aspect? Because at that time they'll be juggling with a lot of different things together. So how important is having a vision of organization structure in that?
relevant thing. I think having a vision of what you want to do, what you want to be an entrepreneur for, and what your business should be is the primary and the fundamental requirement. And once you have that, and I've heard from a number of you that your alumni or your seniors are building an entrepreneurial model to sell soya chips. The vision is to sell soya chips. It is not that I will build a structure and therefore I will sell soya chips. So if the vision is to sell soya chips, and the reason why that group or that person has chosen soya chips, then he or she knows, immediately what is needed to meet that goal. Or then there will be collaborators who will come and say that to meet the goal of selling 10 packets of soya chips, you need 3 people. That becomes the structure. So there cannot be a predictive structure for all entrepreneurial outfits or startups. It will have to be dependent on what is the requirement of the business and the goal and the task at that level.
For a venture of that kind, which is going to be essentially small, again it depends on the size of investment and the kind of market you want to capture. Assuming that it's going to be small, as it normally happens, then organizational structure should not be much of an issue, because you will have few persons, maybe a couple of functional specialists, marketing, finance guys, etc. So in that kind of a situation, it's your one-on-one relationship with your colleagues or subordinates that's going to matter, rather than thinking about a tall organization or a bureaucratic organizational structure. That doesn't really work in this kind of a situation.
I just want to clarify, was your question to which organization to choose, or did you mean for the entrepreneurs what kind of a structure to be formulated?
The latter. What kind of structure? I didn't mean that we should have a mission.
If you were to start a company, is that what your question
Yeah,
is?
if we were to join a company which is a startup, what kind of focus should it have on that organization structure?
So you were looking at what structure should we be looking at when you want to be part of any organizations also?
Yeah, I think don't bother so much about what kind of organization structure you are going to build. Go ahead, do your business, right? Whatever structure fits it best, it will automatically evolve. And maybe some 5-10 years down the line, we'll invite you to share what kind of organization structure worked there. That would be more interesting.
I will take a moment to summarize the discussion. So, organizational structure determines strategy. We need to keep reviewing it and provide opportunities to the employees with the current generation coming in. With competition, you need to keep constantly innovating and providing newer solutions through organizational structures to guide your company. Thank you, panelists, for providing us with valuable insights on the topic. I'll hand it over to Kundal.
The discussion helped us get an insight into the changing organization and team structures, and I think will certainly help us in adapting to the needs of the hour. Thank you, Kunal, for moderating the discussion. We would now request Professor Janal Shah to kindly come on stage and felicitate the panelists.